welcome back to the TUNERPUNK blog. Today we're actually going to do something informative and helpful maybe to someone. This is my 1995 Honda Civic CX. That means it's a 1.5 with no options, so it's not fast. But either one or both of my CV axles is messed up, so we're going to replace both of them today because why not? And we're also going to teach you hopefully how to do that. So, yeah.
I think this is our first stock thing we've ever done.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we worked on.
Yeah.
Another Civic, which you'll see a video of that eventually. But yeah, so that's the plan. So stick with us, and hopefully you'll learn how to do this. So if you have a 1995 Civic, it's basically the same for any Civic from 92 to 95, really. So.
Well, and then E series all the same, B series all the same.
Yeah.
Generally, just slight differences in sizes and all that, but it's the same concept all around.
The process is the same either way. So let's get to it.
Amber.
Alright, so the first step is to take your wheels off, or at least crack the lugs. You don't want to take the wheels all the way off just yet, but I have a little lug lock here from the previous owner, so I have to use this little lug lock key. If you have these, make sure you don't lose them because you'll hate your life. But basically, we're just going to get in here and loosen these up on both sides so that we can get the wheel off later. Hi Amber, how are you doing? Are you going to help? No? Let me get the
Amber,
Alright, those are loose.
You gonna find that jack spot or what?
Alright, so found the jack spot. You always want to make sure when you jack up your car, if you're doing it from the front, that you're on, like the frame, my car has a little jack spot on it, so not a big deal. But I don't want to be jacking up on random plastic bits and then die afterwards.
I've seen people rip off their bumpers.
So. Alright, so it's very important to use jack stands. As you can see at the front of the car when we jacked it up, there's only one point of contact. So the car can turn like this and kill you, and you don't want that to happen. It's not worth fixing a CV axle to be dead. So right here on my little Civic, there is a little tiny bit of the frame that is designed to be jacked on and to support weight. So basically when you put your jack stand in here, you want it to go up as high as you can possibly go, which is only one click because Hondas are super low. So basically you just place your jack stand there, and then you bring the car down onto the jack stand, and it will support the weight. So you want to have two jack stands at least at all times. So we're going to do one on this side and then one on that side so that the car can't wiggle at all, especially because we're going to be wrenching on it and it could tip over and we could die. So if we died, we wouldn't be able to post this video on YouTube, and then you wouldn't learn anything, and that would suck. So jack stand, always a good idea. Do it. Alright, so like I said, here's this little metal bit right here. This will support the weight of the car on this side. So we'll just take our little jack stand, stick it right there in the middle, and we're good to go.
Even an arrow to tell you to do it.
Yep. Alright, so the car's jacked up. There's only about an inch-ish, but the wheel spins freely, so that works for us. And basically you just want to get your lug nuts off. And that's super fun to watch, I'm sure, but there's people out there that don't know what the hell's going on here. So. Also, you want to try not to lose those, but usually that happens anyway, so we'll see what happens. And your wheel is free.
Are those Brimbos?
No.
Oh. Not a race car then.
Yep. Alright, so this little guy right here has to come off. This is a 32mm nut. Here's a 32mm impact socket. Fits on it just fine. In here, there is like a little dip in this right here. And this is supposed to be crushed in so that it prevents the rotation of this when you're driving. Normally you would just get a screwdriver and just pop it right in here and just pry that out. Unfortunately, I snapped the tip of this screwdriver off in here, so word to the wise, try not to do that in the future. But now, basically I've opened it enough that it should spread when we release it, so I'm going to just kind of get this big scary breaker bar and just wrench this thing off and kind of hope for the best. So while we're doing that, somebody needs to be standing on your brake so that the caliper will hold the rotor and that this won't spin while you're trying to wrench on it. So we're gonna see how that goes. Alright, so after you have your jack stands, your car's lifted up, basically you want to have your buddy just stand on the brake, and also we found that it's a lot easier to do this if you lock your steering as straight as you can get it. So we're going to take our big breaker bar and our 32mm impact socket and drop it on here, and hopefully this will just crack right off. So we might get lucky and we might not, so we're going to see what happens. Alright, so we got really lucky and it was barely on there, which is awesome. So this guy just comes right off of here, and we'll do that on both sides, and then we'll move on to the next step. But this is the end right here of the CV axle. So this has to come out of the rotor assembly and all that stuff, and then it basically just pops out of that end, and then we replace it. So we're going to go ahead and get all this stuff disassembled and kind of show you those steps, and then we'll get the CV axle out.
Alright, so this is another classic reason to replace your CV joint here. You can even see that it moves a little bit. There's tons of gunk and goop in here, and it gets in your ball bearings and messes up, and no one likes scratchy balls, so this is why we're replacing this.
Alright, so right here at the end of, this is the front control arm. There's a little castle nut right here. It's 17mm. It's held in with a cotter pin, which we already removed because it's a big pain in the ass and nobody wants to watch it. But I have it somewhere here. This little guy right here holds in this castle nut. So you got to remove that cotter pin. Usually have to unfold them and then just pull them out with a pair of pliers. And then this right here will just come right off. So we're just going to get our socket driver on here and take off this castle nut.
It's like some kind of movie magic that came off so easy.
Right.
It's not like we were turning it the wrong way the whole time.
Never happens.
Never.
Ever. I am so good at
Martha Stewart also never burns any cakes.
Alright, so if you come up here and you look, here's the castle nut, and the way that this works is this cotter pin right here, I don't know if you can see it in my glove, but it goes straight through the little castles and it holds it so that this can't back off, because that area moves up and down and it moves all around all the time. So this little guy is off now, and we should be able to hopefully just pop this out of place and then swing everything open so that we can get the CV axle off. So we'll see what happens. Alright, so as you can see, what we did here is we just jacked straight up through this thing on the bottom right here, this little guy, and broke it free of this bracket. And now we have the jack with the rag on it, and we're jacking up against the brake rotor here to just free all that stuff up and get it out of the way. So now this should just swing out in this direction, and we can remove the CV axle here, and you can definitely see all the damage. So that's the next step. Alright, so we were able to swing the wheel hub out. We have a little soft Harbor Freight rubber mallet. I think it's 3 pounds or something, 4 pounds. And you just want to gently tap at the end of your CV axle there, and once this is swung out, that'll just slip right through your wheel hub here, and then that's the end of the CV axle. So now we basically just have to get up under the transmission. You want to make sure that you have a drain pan there first, because when you pop this axle out, a bunch of transmission fluid will drain out. So you definitely need to have manual transmission fluid available before you start this job too. But we're going to go ahead and pull this out. If you look, and if you want to just like kind of follow the shape of the CV axle here, it starts right here and then it goes all the way up into the transmission there. I'm not sure if you can see that.
Transaxle.
Well, yeah, the transaxle, which then goes. So yeah, we're going to pop this out, and we'll move on to the next step.
Alright, so hopefully the GoPro is in the right area, and you can see us over here. This is where the CV axle meets the transaxle, because it's front wheel drive, so it's a transaxle. And you put a pry bar or something in there to get it out. There's a little ring that clips in, and it's super easy, super convenient, and you just kind of pry and wiggle on it till it pops out, which I've already done. And I already see a little bit of transmission fluid leaking. I really hope we're in frame here. But if I pull this out,
There we go. All right, you're good.
a little bit of prying on this. Can you pop this sucker out? You gotta be careful because there's teeth. And because we're at a slight angle, we're not losing too much transmission fluid out of there. And now that sucker is Audi 500. Oh,
Bam, nailed it.
this transmission fluid's making my fingers feel weird.
Nice. All right, so here's our CV axle. I'm not sure if you can tell, but at the bottom of my shock and strut tower, basically right now, there's this wishbone, and both ends of the CV axle don't fit out of this, through this little area right here. So these are 17mm nuts right here. So we're just basically going to remove the control arm, and we're going to take the wishbone off of the control arm, and then just drop the CV axle down and out of it, and then we'll just lift the other one, the new one, in, and then put everything back together before we reinstall it. So we just can't pull this all the way through, and we realized that at the last second. I'm glad that we did now before we fought with it for 500 years, but yeah, so we're just going to free this guy up off of this, and then remove this bolt that goes through them to do that, and just drop the CV axle out. So that's the plan. Alright, so we got the old CV axle out. As you can see, like I said, this boot is completely thrashed, and there's just a bunch of shit in there. So that's what was causing the clicking when I was turning. So as soon as I heard that, I knew that we kind of had to do this. This probably is the only one that's damaged. I don't know if the other one will be too, but the process is basically the same, so we're probably not going to show you both. We might, but I don't think so. But there's a little ring over here. It's like a little snap ring that you have to take off when you do this job, because this is... Yeah, it's not on the new one.
Take it off.
Oh, it is on the new one. My bad, it's not on the... It is on the new one, so I don't have to take this off. So if you look closely here, you can see this little ring. That little ring is kind of, it works the way that an impact driver works, where that little ring is what holds the CV axle into the transaxle. So it's important to make sure that you have that ring. Occasionally you'll get a set that doesn't have them. The other thing that you want to look for is if these are the same basic shape and size. So you don't want to be under your car trying to replace stuff and have the wrong type stuff. So if you look here, and you can just kind of eyeball it, basically it doesn't really... I mean, either it's close or it's not close at all. So there's my new CV axle down there, as you can see, still in the box. It has a new axle nut on it, which we'll be using. And that's basically it. So I am satisfied that these look the same, so we're going to go ahead and reverse the process, which we'll show you, to get this whole thing back installed. And we'll put the wheel on, and we'll do the other side, and then we'll come back. So that's that. Alright, so what we're doing is Owen is holding down the lower control arm. I'm pulling this wishbone back, and we're just snaking the CV axle in here. So we just want to pop that in, and then we're gonna pop that back into the transaxle, which you can't probably see all the way down in there, but that's the hole for it. So yeah, that's what we're doing. So we're gonna get this back installed. And I'll show you one thing about the end of the CV axle, and then we'll put the wheel back on, and we'll basically be done, except for the other side, which we'll do off camera. So there you go. Alright, so we went ahead and threaded the CV axle through this wishbone, and we pushed this 17mm bolt back in through the suspension wishbone into the control arm. This takes a little bit of doing. We were going to jack it up, but we were able to just kind of finagle it around a little bit. It helps to have another set of eyes so that you can see that this is straight with this. And then once you get this bolt into that right there, you can just take a soft mallet and just hammer it straight through. So have to reinstall this, and then we have to get this back into the wheel, and or the wheel hub rather, and then we'll be done with this side. So that's the next step. We'll see what happens. All right. So our final steps are to get the axle end right here back into the wheel hub. This is basically moving around freely, so Owen is going to sort of just guide it in the hole, and I'm going to slide down on it. And
You gotta get the teeth lined up.
yeah.
You can probably line it up better. I can, can't you?
No, I can't really. I don't have any. The tricky part about this is getting these teeth straight once you're going back in.
They're not in there.
Ah, man. Sorry.
Tell me what's like.
Alright, so we're going to fiddle with this and then we'll be back when it's done. Alright, so we were able to get the axle back through the hub with a little bit of wiggling. It takes, well, a lot of wiggling. And now we just need to put this back into the control arm. This holds the brake assembly on, basically. So basically you just got to lift this up and just set it right in there and wiggle it a little bit. And do you have that castle nut handy? Nope. It's in the parts, in the magnet tray. Alright, so here's our castle nut. You just want to have a good look at it and make sure it's not stripped or anything, and it looks fine. So we're going to screw this back on. It's 17 millimeter. So because of movie magic, soon I should have a 17 millimeter wrench in my hand. It's in that breaker bar, I believe, or on the socket driver somewhere. There it is, thank you. So just want to make sure that you're on tighten. And you want to tighten this. Now when you're tightening a castle nut, it's very important for you to consider the fact that you have to put the cotter pin back in there. So you want to look for where the hole is at, which I can't really tell. And can you give me that 17 millimeter wrench actually? Thank you. And you want to just keep an eye out for the cotter pin hole as you go to get an idea of where you're going to end up. Because the worst thing that can happen is you get everything buttoned up and then you can't get your cotter pin in. So I know that it's straight this way, so I can tighten this down a little bit more and then end up in that location. So that's what we're going to do, and then we'll show you how to put the cotter pin in just a second. Alright, so we have our castle nut on and I torqued it, and it's facing the right direction. So this is a cotter pin right here. If you can see really well, it's basically just a pin that's folded around like a punch, so it has two ends on it. One of them is tapered and one of them is not. So you want to just put it in to where it's easiest to remove next time. So what we're going to do is we're just going to stick this right through that hub right there. And can I get some needle noses or something? Yeah. Thank you. Just set this down. And we'll get that in. So I like to have them up and down. Some people like to have them side to side, but this is how I prefer to do it. So basically you want to just, if I can do this with my left hand upside down all weird, you want to just grab this little guy right here and bend it out. And then I usually will just bend them right around the bottom of the thing that I'm basically torquing. So you take that and you get your pliers on here and you want to just wrap it around nice and tight and just jam it up. So that's not going anywhere. And then you bend this one out of the way as well, which you can sometimes do with your hand. And your cotter pin is basically in. I'm going to tighten this up a little bit with my finger. So there you go. So now this is bent around and it can't back out, which means the castle nut can't back out, so you're all good to go. So our wheel hub is reassembled, our CV axle is on. We just need to put the nut on, which we have to show you a trick for, and put the wheel on and we're done. So there you go. Alright, so my CV axle replacement parts came with a new 32 millimeter nut for the axle right here. The thing about this is if you look, there's a little tiny notch right here, and this thing works kind of similar to the way that the cotter pin works. So the easiest thing to do first is to go ahead and rotate your wheel, which you can do by hand, and just pop that so it's a good angle. I want to put this on really well, so we're going to go ahead and screw this on and tighten it. And my buddy Owen is going to stand in there on the brakes. You also want to hold the CV axle from the back, so at least get good leverage on it. And you got to grab this right here and just do this by hand for the most part. You don't want to use an impact when you're reinstalling this because you can potentially strip it, and that will be a huge major problem. So I'm just going to put this back on this breaker bar here and just basically torque it as far as I can. And we should be using a torque wrench for this, but I don't know what the torque spec is, so it was on really tight. I'm going to put it back on really tight. So torque this down basically as much as I can. Alright, so that basically is as far as that will go. Now, the last step is you want to get a really substantial screwdriver or a punch or something, and you want to hammer the edge of this little collar on this nut down into that notch so that this nut can't back its way out. It's a really important step. So we're just going to pop this on here as close into the middle as I can possibly get it. And give it a couple taps just to get a little dent going. And as you can see, that's already starting to crush, and so we want to just really hammer that in pretty good. And the idea here is to make a divot in that collar as deep into that notch as we can get it. Now that's in there pretty good, but I can still fit a tool under there if I need to do this again. So that's the last step. We're going to go ahead as just a quick tuner punk tip. Owen and I have really dirty hands because we've been working on this project for a while, and the brake rotor is kind of covered in gunk. So before I put the wheel back on and we do all that stuff and then we go on a little test drive, you want to clean your rotor off, your brake rotor, as much as you can to get some of that grease and all that junk out of there, because it'll cook and it could cause warping, it could cause cracking even in some cases, and we don't want to do that. So I don't really want to get in here and take all this shit off again to do my rotors in 5 minutes. So I'm going to clean this stuff up. We're going to reinstall this. We'll probably work on the other side, and then we'll go for a little test drive, and that'll be that. So that's it. That's how you replace CV axles on my 95 Honda Civic. Super dirty, super tired. Finishing steps. Check and make sure that your lug nuts are tight, because I've not done that. Check and make sure nothing is leaking. Make sure there aren't any tools under the car before you back it out. Or dogs, or anybody else really. And clean everything up when you're done. Don't be a dick. That's about it. One of my headlights went out while I was driving around to test and see, so I got to go do that. We're going to make a 4-hour video on how to replace a headlight because it takes that fucking long. Yeah, I hope that helped you out. If you have a Honda out there that needs CV axle replacements, I hope that was helpful. And soon we'll have a video that's actually about the Z, I think,
Right.
someday. So yeah.
Well, it's only Saturday, so.
Yeah, tomorrow's a whole new day. So yeah, stay tuned. Come back next time.
And Twitter, Facebook, and
Yeah.
No, we don't have Facebook. Never mind. I lied.
We do have Facebook.
We do?
Yeah,
Look at that.
yeah. I'll link it below. And
Everything else.
you might be able to see her. That's my girlfriend, Shannon. Come on in. Come on in. Rub your little face. She filmed most of this, so thank you to her. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
They're like bright.